Hello and welcome. Welcome to The Joy is in the Journey. I'm Gina Colvario, Krupka, practitioner out of also in the Holmes Institute. I am out of the Florida campus, but I am at home in Rhode Island, Concordia Centers for Spiritual Living. And The Joy is in the Journey is here to help people find new ideas, new ways to find more joy in your life. So there's always room for better. I'm a life coach as well as a practitioner. And one of the things that people would always ask me, is this it? Did I get to this point in my life and go through all of this to be here? And yes and no. The first is yes, everything that you've done has gotten to where you are. Everything that you thought created the life that you're in. And it's only the beginning. There's always more room for joy. There's always more to be an adventure. Life itself is limitless. And here at The Joy is in the Journey, every week we talk about different things that bring us to that place of joy. How is it that I can learn a little bit more about something I didn't know about to bring me there? And I am blessed today to have a wonderful, actually one of my teachers that I absolutely love. Dr. Reverend Toni LaMotta is here, and she is a gift to me and to so many. She's been a minister for over 25 years. She's a best-selling author, and get this title, What You Really Want Wants You. Love that. So you could find she has many books, many interests, and I am blessed to have her here today. So Reverend Toni, welcome. Welcome to The Joy is in the Journey. And I found you through the Florida campus of the Holmes Institute, and just so blessed to have taken several classes with you. And you have a diverse background, and I know you always say you bring both the head and the heart together, which is beautiful. And that's what we really are. We're law and love. That's what we're all about. And when you can get that mix, magic happens. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Gina. Delighted to be with you.
So today we're going to start out, one of the things that we're going to talk about, and there's all kinds of things. I mean, one of the things that I've loved is I walk into your class thinking I'm learning one thing, and I learned so many different ways to look at it. So I'm very grateful for that. But I actually approached you on talking about your book. The most recent book that you have is Embracing the Aging Process. And that's available on Amazon, I would assume?
Oh, absolutely.
So again, it's Embracing the Aging Process by Dr. Toni LaMotta. And I definitely would, go right out. It's on Amazon, right at your fingertips anytime. So tell me a little bit about your book, if you can.
Sure. When I talk about the aging process, I look at it in 4 different aspects. The first one, you mentioned joy. One of the things that keeps us from joy are all the fears we have. And people have so many fears around aging. And one of the reasons they have fears is because they believe in the myths. One of my favorite to debunk is the fact that, we lose our memory as we get older. And the kinds of things that we think are going to happen only happen because we think they're going to happen. There have been actual studies to show that that is just not true. So in my book and in my website, I talk a lot about some of these myths, and we get to question ourselves and saying, what are my beliefs? What are my fears? What's keeping me from really feeling the joy of this time of my life? Because this time, as I heard someone introduce themselves yesterday, and they said, most people would say I'm retired. I'm not retired. I'm liberated. I'm free to be and do anything that I want. And to me, one of the things that the aging process also does is teach us how to grow spiritually. I believe that the aging process itself is fuel for growing consciousness. So the very things that we go through as we age, for example, letting go of lots of people we love, one of the things we find as we age is people are dying. And one of the things, we sometimes have to give up homes or give up some independence. And we think instead of thinking in terms of what we give up, we want to start thinking in terms of what we actually have at this point in our life and what we can look at. Example, someone who has macular degeneration and can't see so well. I've heard a number of people who've had this diagnosis say to me, my insight has increased profoundly. So when the eyesight goes, the insight can increase. And there's just so many examples of that. So I like to teach people to look at the gift, look at what's really happening here. That is the gift. In an illness, what's the gift here, rather than look at what's wrong. I think many years ago, I used to teach change management in organizations. I had an exercise where people would come in a circle and I'd have them pick a partner. And I would have them stare at each other for a few minutes and then say, one person change something without the other person seeing you do it. So they turn their backs and they would change something and they would turn around. The other person had to see if they observed what they changed. And we would do this until people were sometimes half disrobed because they would be taking away things. And then when we discussed the process, everyone in the group thought change was losing something. They could have added anything they wanted, and no one ever adds anything. They take away. So we began to realize that we have a belief about change that it's things being taken from us rather than what could be added. So the spirituality of aging. One of the other things that we do, I said there were 4, so that was 2. The third one is looking at a life review. And I love teaching a process of journaling that I call conversations with yourself. And that is not exactly the journaling that you're normally used to, but things like having a dialogue with your body, considering your body as a person and talking to it, and then having memories about your body and the physical things that happened, or having a dialogue, for example, with a divorce, having a dialogue with an illness. Then we do many different ways of journaling. So it's not just one technique. And I teach people that to look at the past experience, because if a past experience is coming up, it's trying to tell us something for today. People have dreams. We look at the dreams. We look at all kinds of things like that. So to me, that's another way of growing spiritually. It's a way of letting go of the misinterpretation of our past, if you will. And then the fourth aspect that I look at all the time is what about the future? No matter how old you are, you still have a future if you're breathing. So we literally write our obituary. We write our epitaph. We think about how do we want to be remembered? What are the things that we still have life in us for? And I guess the best question I ask all the time is, what does my life wish to become? Because that part of us that knows it wants something is calling us forth. So that's a very brief nutshell of what's in that book. And I actually have a course on that where I go through and help people through those 4 processes. But primarily the essence of it is how to grow spiritually. And the fact is that the aging process itself is an amazing opportunity for spiritual growth, more than any other time in our life, I believe, because in the other times, the purpose of the other times is different. To grow a family, to become all you can at your job. And, those are things like Hindus call it the householder, and you need to go through those things. But the aging process, well, let me share something that happened many years ago that I think is the essence of why I teach this. And I had a hip operation, replaced my hip. And the day that they got me out of bed, the very next day, my femur broke. And on the right-hand side, I was completely unable to move. And so I was literally laying in a bed for 3 months. It was an experience that I don't wish on anyone, to say the least. And all my friends who know me thought I would probably have this great spiritual oasis and have a wonderful time. I watched sitcoms during the time because I couldn't think of anything else, and just let myself laugh. And at the end of the time, or towards the end of the time, I started to say, all right, what's the gift here? What in the world was this about? And I literally heard the words, there is nowhere to go. There is nothing to do. That has been what I wake up with every day now, and remind myself that the process of life is about being right here, right now. It's not about achieving anything. It's not about having to do anything. There is nowhere. There's not even, we don't have to pray. We don't have to meditate. I know that sounds like blasphemy, but it's like we think we have to do these things to please God. And so we do all these spiritual practices, or if I do the following, this will happen. And so I let go of all that. And I literally live that way most of the time. I can't say all the time now, but really allowing, like, knowing that there is nothing that I have to do frees me to do what's in front of me. So.
Which is beautiful. There's and there was so much in there. I have a couple of just comments that I want to just, the first thing that you talked about with the fears. I think that is definitely a misconception that we've had for so long, that A doesn't equal B for anything. It's what we conceive of it. It's what we choose it to be at any given point. I have an uncle that was 96 years old. He just transitioned a few months ago. And he, up until this COVID shutdown, was going into casinos. Literally. And at that, he was amazing. He lived every day of his life. And it was a choice. It was a conscious choice that he just lived every day. And that can be, I always say, the best is yet to come. I say that all the time, because that's the adventure of life. The more you know, the more you grow. And it is an option. Things like vision. I have a 2010 vision. And people say, oh, as you get old. And I always affirm, not me. I have hawk eyes. They're better than perfect. And every time I hear anything otherwise, I say out loud, no, I have better than perfect. And that's just the way that it's going to stay. And it stays. And, for some people, they think that that's just wishful thinking. But it's not just thinking, it's a belief. There's so much deeper than that. So I really appreciate you going into that. And, just because I can't do what I used to do doesn't mean, because I've done workshops as well on this, and I just find it fascinating. I'm not supposed to. I've already been there, done that. Time for something new, something more. And I too have a friend that's retired that says it was her liberation. And that is a beautiful way of thinking of retirement, because no one ever really stops. And if people do, they stop living, that's when they get old. The mentality, the consciousness, that's what changes. It's not, and again, nothing is taken from. My view on age is every day is a gift. I was 33 years old when my sister transitioned at 37. And ever since then, I feel like I want double the life. I get to be here, and I'm going to appreciate every bit of it. And no matter what comes, like you said, you get that option. You get the option to turn around and say, what's in this? There's something I'm supposed to learn here. Even the most difficult of times, there's a reason for everything. And what can because I don't want to have to do that lesson again. So I better learn it the first time around so that it doesn't keep popping up. And I too had a couple of major surgeries that put me out of life for a little bit. And, there was so much wisdom from the realization. I didn't know how to slow down. My life was always chaos. I was raised in chaos. And the bottom line is the world spun without me. When I wasn't in the middle of doing and leading everything went on. And knowing that, it gave me the awareness. And now my prayer is, what would you have me be? Not what would you have me do? Because I have to be before I'm able to do. Otherwise, I'm coming from it from a completely different point of view. It's a have to instead of a get to.
Excellent.
Now, you were telling me when we were talking about this, the best part of the book for you was what came out of it, the offshoots that came out of it for you, which were huge. You said
well, there's been loads of things, but I've been talking for a long time about conscious aging, and recently somebody asked me, what is your focus today? And I said, it's moved to aging. It's not just the aging is, consciousness is actually aging. And that just takes me to a whole other topic, if you want to go there, which is really about the development of adults. And many years ago, I had the privilege of studying at Columbia University, and I studied in a course called Adult and Continuing Education. So I'm an adult educator, which is where I really learned how to teach, which teaching is not about imparting information to anyone. It's leading from where they're at. And so it's leading from educare, that's what it means, to bring out of. And so I also learned that one of the things that was most important in teaching was to really help people think critically and question their assumptions. And so Gina could attest to the fact in my classes, I put people on the spot a lot. And because I love when that happens for me, and not to hurt or harm anybody, but to really say, look at another way, see if you can see this another way. And so one of the things that I studied at Columbia that I loved was the way adults develop, and studied all the famous people. I won't bother dropping names at this point, but and it led me eventually to start to study something called integral theory. And I studied with a man named Ken Wilber. And many of you have probably heard of Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber is probably the most prodigious, proficient philosopher of our day. And it's exciting to say I've actually had some courses with him, online, of course, but a brilliant man. And he actually wrote a book on the theory of everything. He's trying to put everything together, which is impossible. You really can't have a theory. There's a lot of people who will debunk some of what he says. And there are people who question even the way he looks at this. But he actually took a study from someone named Claire Graves, who created something called spiral dynamics. And Ken Wilber has his own version of it, which he uses colors to represent how consciousness has aged. And the whole idea is that all of society,
is that the chart you had given me?
That's one of them. Yes, you can show that if you want, sure. What we're looking at there is a combination. This is a combination of spiral dynamics and the work of Ken Wilber. It puts both of them together, basically, because they're both a little different. They use different colors for different things, but they're basically talking about the same thing. And then I also studied with a woman named Terry O'Fallon, and Terry has a different system. So I'm just suggesting that. I just lost you. Are we there?
We're here, and I just see your computer without a picture. So we can hear you and see you. So
I have no idea why.
But that's, so I'm going to take you out until I can see you again. So we'll take you out of that picture. But I can still hear you. So we can at least have a conversation. There you are. You're back.
That's very weird. My computer has been doing some strange things. That's another way we keep learning with all this computer stuff that we're doing. I think has been fascinating, especially as we age. It gets more challenging sometimes. But so the developmental process, all right? We didn't have computers. We didn't have the internet. What we were an agrarian society, and people thought differently. And then they went from agrarian to an industrial society. I'm not a big history buff, so I probably won't be able to tell you all the stages that we went through in development. But when you start looking at those stages, you see that people's experience of life was so different that their mentality was different. And so people then get stuck on, we got my name spelled wrong there. I got it.
Sorry about that.
LaMotta, M-O-T-T-A, that's okay. But so these stages of development, and some people say, we go through all of them all the time, but we kind of live in one of them most of the time. So there are some people very few people live at the bottom, lowest level, although infants, right? So, and sometimes the very elderly sometimes go back to infancy, so they live like that. But early people, and this is something we can see in our politics today, are red or blue, according to spiral dynamics, are very traditionally ethnocentric. I mean, we just lived through a president who always talked about put America first. Let's think of ourselves before others. And rather than make that wrong, one of the things that's really important to see in these developmental stages is that it is not wrong to be in kindergarten. It's not better to be in the 8th grade. It's different. So when we look at it that way, it's okay to be in an ethnocentric stage. It's better than egocentric. I mean, someone who's just for themselves. Ethnocentric is the next level up, if you will. And then hopefully we move from there. What happened, it was the scientific evolution. And all of science started to emerge. And so then there were people who began to be very rational. And so what they did was close down the heart and close down any instinct or guts. It was all about capitalism, all about materialism. And, we thrived in that kind of situation, and we still do. In fact, and this is a New Thought channel, most of our New Thought churches live there. And this is going to sound blasphemous, Ernest Holmes lived there. When you talk about the law, you're talking at this stage of development. Good thing he didn't stay there, because then we would just be living in that rational, scientific. And some people accuse religious science of being that and saying it's missing the heart. Well, they miss the rest of the teaching, though.
Well, even Ernest Holmes said by the end, he definitely would have worded things and done things differently. This thing called You is my favorite Ernest Holmes book, and it is pure heart. It's a love letter from spirit. And that was definitely towards the end of his life, one of his last books. So it's part of the aging process too, when we see things almost from a higher perspective.
Well, and we go through his last one. I mean, one day I literally put his books in chronological order. Somewhere I have a list of them when they were written, and you could see his development. I think also when we do a life review, one of the things I like people to do is look at these stages of development. You can almost see the day that you changed from one to another. You suddenly woke up to something new. And so many people in our society today are what they call postmodern, and that's often used as green. And it's probably no accident that, the green economy is there. But it's about pluralism and equality. But the interesting thing about green is that Greens talk about equality, and we're fighting for all the rights, but our way is the right way and everybody else is wrong. So the challenge with green is Greens hate hierarchy. So they would not even listen to this. So if somebody's listening to me right now and say, what's she doing? She's making a hierarchy, you're probably green. So, and that's fine. That's a good place to be. But civil rights, environmentalism, world centricism, All of these are excellent, and they've been around for like the last 50 years or so. And again, a lot of our churches, and this is some of the conflict in our churches between the oranges and the greens. You can see, and then there are some blues still who are very into traditionalism, and it always has to be the way it was, So when we start to understand this stuff, we can not only understand our own development, but we can understand other people so much more. And all
My,
of this.
I just want to say my experience came from your class. And as we were going through this, it truly, now I've led all kinds of, I've been public speaking since I was a teenager. So I've done all kinds of leadership programs. I've run everything from Toastmaster clubs to different businesses of my own and other people's, medical offices, everything under the sun. And when I looked at this from a leader or a trainer or a teacher's perspective, or a minister's, because of course it's ministerial school, what a difference it made. Because it certainly is not, it looks like it because it's in a row of hierarchy. It's just different. It's just different. No one is better than the other, like no one person is any better. It's just different expressions. But I could clearly see how people fit into those type of ideas. And the gift of it is in teaching. When you understand someone, you teach them better. Because as an instructor or a teacher or a parent, it's our job to get a message across. Everyone has something that we try to teach or talk to somebody about. And it's the job, it's my mission to get this point across to you as a facilitator, as an anything. If you are not hearing me because I'm not using the right language, it's like if you're trying to speak, the old way that it always was to a teenager, they don't want to hear from you because they're not on that wavelength. They're not hearing the language. They're not understanding the mannerisms. The way that you're carrying yourself is different with a teen than it would be with someone who's 40 or 50 years old. And I believe that one of the difficulties that we have in our centers sometimes not attracting younger people is because of that. We're trying to use the old methods to bring in new people. Now, the irony of that is since the pandemic, many new younger people have found us because we're using different modes to get the message out there and doing it in different ways. Therefore, we're more on the wavelength to attract who it is for years we've been trying to attract. So our center at Concordia, we've grown during the pandemic. And there were some people, of course, that didn't have the technology to be able to keep up, but we've grown in other ways. We've had other people come that were from all over the world that we're going to continue to keep up with and make sure that we offered classes for. We've offered more classes. We've offered more things than we even did when we were, in person, because who we were changed before this happened. We were doing things differently and online. So as the person who's running any type of, I don't care if it's a household, if you want to get your point across, it's up to you to know who you're working with. And not in a telling someone what to do, but in an understanding of what makes them tick. Tell me why I need to do something and I'll do it and I'll remember it. But if you don't tell me the why behind it, I'm sitting there wondering, why should I? And that's an inherent quality that I have, good, bad, or indifferent. But when I teach from the why, it reaches people differently. And that's what this gives me the ability to do, is understand where people are coming from. And if you're crafting a message in any way, whether it's advertising, whether it's, to teenagers or anybody, you're doing it in a way that is using the language and the why that they have. And it's just about coming from life from a different perspective. It's your job to know your craft. And if your craft is teaching in any way, or even communication, it changes. And it's up to us to be the ones that look for the places to change it. And you've helped me with several different things of ways to change it. So I appreciate that. This was one of those ways. It's a tool. It's a
Well,
beautiful tool.
and you've spoken like a very good green, by the way, so thank you. Excellent. And so the next level is literally not seeing the differences. I heard a story recently about, I think it was Einstein gave a class an exam. Have you ever heard that example where he talked about someone coming into a banquet wearing jeans and a sloppy shirt, and he said, you know, what would be your response to them? And everybody talked about how they would teach him how he had to fit in and what he had to do. And Einstein failed all of them. He said the true answer is someone who is enlightened would not even see those differences. So it's really very powerful when we come to teal or second level thinking, and there is only like 2% of the population are at teal. So most people who are at green think they're at teal. When they hear it, they say, oh, equality, I'm all for equality, I'm all for oneness, I teach diversity, I teach all these things. And I'm just going to suggest that there's more. And what the more is has something to do with the many perspectives that you actually aren't looking at. I'm going to teach somebody from a different perspective, but we only have one perspective. And I see as the oneness. I mean, we speak oneness. In New Thought, we speak oneness really well. And there's more. That's all I can say.
Well, there's layers to everything. You know, there's layers to, of course, we want equality. And when you talk about equality and when you push for different things and look at this and look at that, then we're in separation. So it's a challenge in a lot of ways, because of course it's important to bring up and not ignore. And the more we bring it up, the more we are teaching separation. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of dichotomies in all of it, and there's no wrong. And in New Thought, that is to me the best part of New Thought. There is no wrong. You know, I can love you wherever you are, and I don't have to change it.
We say that, Gina. I'm not sure we live that, and I'm including myself in there, that we like to think that, but wouldn't it be great? Everybody, my family doesn't come to my church and I wish they did. You know, that's my way is better. And if they only knew my way, they would be better off. I mean, we have little subtle ways of living through that green filter. And it's, you know, as I say, it's not wrong, but it's an invitation to come, because beyond teal, beyond integral, there's another level, which I probably have not even really talked about in class because I'm not there and therefore I can't speak about it very well. However, I'm aiming there, and I think we all are. And that is when I get that there really is non-dual living. There is no separation. There is only one. I mean, we say the words all the time, but living from that experience, the saints and the sages live that, the mystics live that. And that's the ultimate goal. And we have glimpses of it. I think all of us live there occasionally, myself included. I'm working towards that, looking at that. But I actually had the opportunity to take one of these quizzes, which is very revealing when you take a quiz that shows you where you are, what level you're at. And everybody thinks they're at a higher level when they come out on these quizzes. So it's quite interesting. And I know my reaction was, oh my glory, there's so much more to go, you know, and that's a good thing too. That's, you know, there's more to grow towards, and to get to indigo and spiral dynamics, and Wilbur now has a white element, and Terry O'Fallon is like, you're at 7 and 8, and it's like, oh my God, you're at 4 and 5 when you get to integral, and you still have to go to 7 or 8. You know, there's quite a bit of growth to go through. But the exciting news is there's quite a bit of growth to go through, and we can't even know those stages, because if you ever read David Hawkins, he talks about the percentage of people that are needed to move to the next level. And I think they said it's like 20% need to move to the level before there's a shift in the consciousness of the planet. And we're on the brink of that right now, but we're also on the brink of destruction in our planet, unfortunately, in so many ways. So we're still dealing with ecology. We're still dealing with environmental. We're still dealing with, all the cultural issues. We're dealing with racism. We're dealing with climate control. We're dealing with green issues still.
Yeah.
And so we're a ways before we're going to get to living in that integral level, but it's worth looking for, and it's worth, again, nowhere to go, nothing to do. I don't know where I read it, and I'm not sure I could quote it, but it's almost like you just have to be prepared to receive the grace. That's the essence of it. You can't get there on your own. You can't move from one stage to another by studying it. You can't move to one stage to another by more practice. Maybe if I meditated 4 hours a day, it would work. You can't get there on your own. It's a gift of grace. And so one of the things that, we can do the things that can prepare to receive that grace. But, you can leave your hands open, but you can't grab, you can't grasp.
And I just wanted to show you, Wayne, yes, love-based thinking will rise later. So we're open for questions. If anybody has questions or comments, please feel free to let us know. So yes, it's about being in that open place, being in that loving place, and really I also have to remind myself that there is no there. Like there's not, like one of my things that I always talk about is the joy is in the journey, is this, like the mountaintop. People are always, well, when I get there. But there was a beautiful view every step of the way that you can never get back. Every day of our life, things are changing. People, places, circumstances. We're older. It's always going to be a different view. And the things that might annoy us now, we'd give anything for in 10 years. So it's being in that presence, in the presence. It's really practicing consciousness more than it is a destination. It's being open and paying attention, and not that self-talk, the negative stuff that's in our head or society. When we talk about our teachings, it's about living from the inside out. But we're surrounded by a society that is only the outside in. So the irony of that is never lost on me. It's like a trick sense of humor that our ego plays with us in any given day, is that we're looking at all that external stuff that's distracting us from all the internal stuff. And when we really learn this new thought teaching, and the more we go into and not just read it, learn it, but embody it, the more there is no against, the more we recognize all of these things, that it's just a witness, to witness any circumstance rather than being against it.
You're reminding me of someone that I read a couple of years ago, and that I go back to every now and then, who, again, this is going to sound like blasphemy. He said, we do not create our own reality. Goes against everything we teach in New Thought. But I think he has a point to say, we simply are living through experiences, and we need to just clear the barriers to that oneness. And that's our work. It's cleaning up is the work that we're here called to do. I like to think of it as shadow work. And it's not about, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. We're already enlightened. We're just missing it. We're missing it because we're so absorbed in the wrong things. And we're constantly caught up, as you said, in the outer rather than the inner. But we can't live from the inner either. We are living. If to be embodied means I'm part of the material reality. I have to do a both and somehow. And to recognize and to realize that there is, there's garbage going on in our world. And we don't want to be blinded to it. But at the same token, and we don't create all of that. You and I didn't create it. I love the work of Joel Goldsmith. I tend to go back to him. We read him when I first took Science of Mind, and I was amazed that they taught both, because he contradicts everything Holmes says. When he says, we don't treat for anything. We can't look at the disease. Don't tell me you're going to treat for me to feel well, because then you're seeing me sick. And if you're seeing me sick, that's worse than, so he just goes directly to the absolute. He goes only to God, and he sees nothing but. And that's a challenging place to live. And it is, I'm challenging myself lately, because I'm reading a lot of Goldsmith again, and saying, I don't want to make Ernest Holmes wrong. I don't mean that. I dearly love Ernest Holmes, and a lot of what that teaching has taught me. But I also know that it's like, I am not creating the day-to-day reality. I don't create all of it. I can create how I respond to it. And there's something, we say, well, it's unconscious, and we have to get to our unconscious. Then we're working hard to find those beliefs and get rid of them, and we struggle. Where is the joy in any of that?
But the struggle itself is what keeps us there. So in some ways, sometimes that struggle, and I know for me, it was the would have, could have, should have already been there for the longest of time. And when it's not there anymore. When I followed my bliss, followed what was meant for me, it definitely changed. And as I changed, it changed. And I didn't have that, which was with me for over 40 years of my life. And it's not anymore. And I'm very grateful for that. But it's not because I've arrived anywhere differently. I'm living differently. My consciousness about it is different. And it doesn't, again, it's not about better or worse. It's just, it's
simply aging. The aging process does it for us. It's not like we, and I really think life does it for us. We don't have to be doing anything. We don't have to make it work. We simply allow it to unfold. And that, to me, is a very different way of looking at consciousness. It's not about, if I change my thinking, something must be wrong with my thinking for this to be happening. Why is this happening to me? That's an old way of thinking. And that's a very traditional way of looking at science of mind. What did you do in their consciousness? And as a practitioner, you help people root out those beliefs so that make sure that they'll never believe those again. And people leave you feeling worse than they started, because it's like, oh, what have I done? And I'm creating this, and how do I get rid of this? Instead, to drop all of it, and simply know the truth. And that happens as we get older.
There's different ways to go about it. I love the teachings of Abraham Hicks too, where it talks about just go to a downstream thought. You can't negative yourself into an upstream, you can't go upstream long enough to move yourself forward. It's not going to happen. It's not about, there's a time and a place for therapy, of course, because Ernest Holmes said, you take the pill and you treat. There's a time for both, but at the end of the day, if you're not happy, nothing good's going to happen. It's up to your mindset. And I think that when you were talking about, we have to be in the world, not just of the world, of course. In the beginning, when I first started in this teaching, I would not watch the news because it made me negative. So my answer to joy was to just not pay attention. And my foundations, Reverend Ian ruined that for me. He said, you are here to heal the world. You are here to be that change. You're not paying attention is doing no good. And it was a shock. It was really, because I didn't realize how selfish I was being, because all of the roles that I played in life were giving.
But well, you're an Enneagram too, remember?
I know.
Bring that up.
Actually, we're going to have to meet again, because I definitely want to talk about that as well someday. But it's so important to realize that we are, this new thought is the tipping. We can be that tipping point, and it is working. And there are more than ever.
Careful there, even. We can be the tipping point. Like the rest of the world is wrong. And if we only get it all right, we can help the rest of the world. I think there's even something separate in that. I mean, I'm going to challenge you again, because you know I like to do that.
I don't mean it just in that way, but I'm saying there's so much new happening in the world that we can make a difference in the way we approach it. You know, there's so many opportunities for evolution. You know, actually, there was a question that Wayne had asked. He said, what fosters a living faith in oneness? And I think that that's a powerful question.
Who is Wayne Baldwin? I never heard of him.
And he's somebody that's actually just someone's watching, one of our viewers that's asking. And he, you know, that is a great faith in oneness. You know, how do we get to that place, and how do we be in communion in that oneness? You know, it's practice.
Well, there are lots of different practices where we can do that. I mean, one of the things that I've taught is that whole body mystical awakening, which is prayer using our bodies, because we're so used to using our heads. And when we let ourselves be more embodied, we get in touch with the rest of the material reality. And as we get in touch with it, we start recognizing then we're more than just people even. We include the animals, we include the cosmos. And so we go in the stages of development, go from, you know, being me-centered to being ethnocentric, to being world-centric, to being cosmic-centric. So I know a couple of years ago, I went to a place called the Cosmic Center, and they had me teaching some things there. And you know, they were into blue flames and yellow flames and all this stuff. And they were like way out there with all the ascended masters. And at first, my first reaction was, I don't want to go there. That's not, you know, where I'm at. Just like you with the news, like, let's shut that off. And then I realized that my God wasn't as big as theirs. They had a bigger God than I did. And so I allowed myself to open to their experience. And I began to experience conversations with the ascended masters, and with understanding and knowing that there is more to life. I think one of the things I love to teach is about the three faces of God. And it's a piece that we in New Thought, we do a really good job of teaching the God within, and the Almighty, and the one that's, but then we forget about the one that we can communicate with. And we don't talk about that second phase of God. So it's like I started recognizing I now have spiritual guides that I can talk to, and many of the mystics. You know, how do I get to be in oneness? Well, talk to the people who knew how to do that. I have conversations with Teresa of Avila. I know that sounds kind of insane, but I do it a lot through journaling, because it's the way that works mostly for me. But you can just have that conversation with someone that you know lives that way, and then ask them. And it's amazing as you write back and forth to them, the wisdom that's already in you. You already know how to do that. And so we come to that. And again, living in that oneness is grace. It's not something we can work towards. It's not if we do enough visioning, if we do enough spiritual mind treatment, we'll get there. You know, it's like, be careful with that. It's not a rule-based thing that says it's accumulative. It's grace. So we can make ourselves available. And that's one of the ways I'm making myself available. I've been studying the mystics and looking at how they think, because they live in that oneness. That's what I want. That's how I want to live my life. I want that extraordinary bliss. And I have moments, I have touches of it, and I can tell you some fabulous experiences in my life, but I don't live there on a consistent basis. And so, you know, so Wayne, that's how you go about living there on a consistent basis, is to start talking to people. You know, if you want to be a carpenter, you go learn from a carpenter. You want to be a mystic, go learn from mystics. Go talk to the mystics and read any one of them. Juliana of Norwich, unbelievable stuff. John of the Cross, all these people. Meister Eckhart. There are just so many people that we can go back and read. Joel Goldsmith. He lives there. He totally lived there. And, my mind is blown when I read his books. And just in reading sometimes, it moves me there, which is very interesting.
Now, as our time's going, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity.
Oh, we're almost out.
Yes, it's moving fast. You have a wonderful course coming up. Tell us about your class.
Well, the class is called Practical Mysticism. And I didn't write the course. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Reverend Joan Stedman is the one who put this together, and it was put together as a religious science curriculum. I taught it maybe 15 years ago. And, when I went to read it recently, I don't remember any of it. I mean, not even I don't know whether it's my mind or I doubt it, but it just told me what a different place I am now from when I looked at it before. So even if you've taken the course before, trust me, it's a new course, not because I'm making it any different. But the course is really a practical way of looking at the fact that we already are mystics. Every one of us, and every one of us have had these experiences, and it's a matter of getting back in touch with that and recognizing the experiences that we have every single day and starting to see those things. It's also looking at the mystics. We do look at Teresa of Avila in the course. We go through the interior castle, and Carolyn Mace has a great book about that, where she takes us through some exercises that we'll be doing it. I like to call it soul work. We're doing some very deep work that says, what's in me? Where do I touch that experience of God? Because the difference between this and, when I taught spiritual mind treatment, I remember one day I had this amazing revelation, which is going to sound super simplistic right now, is that people do spiritual mind treatment according to the stage of development they're at. If you're at a magical stage of development and you're going to do spiritual mind treatment to get that new car and to get that new house. And it works, by the way. I did it myself. In the beginning, I remember praying for I forgot what color car. And sure enough, within 2 weeks, I had that new car. And each of those things. And spiritual mind treatment got me there. But really doing spiritual mind treatment is when you recognize God is, and there is no separation. And you get that at the core of your being. You're living in that higher state. You don't need any of the other words. In fact, most people do the whole treatment all wrong. They announce what they want, and this is let me outline it. And God wants to give me this, and it's like we misinterpret it because that's the stage we're still at. And, even cleaning up the planet and peace on earth, all that stuff, it's not up to us. We don't get to create. We get to recognize and to accept that there is only one. So part of what we're going to do in the course is also study this Joel Goldsmith stuff and blow our minds a little bit and say, how do we live this? And one of the things, and Gina can tell you, when I teach, I don't pontificate. I don't have the answers. I'm a mystic. I'm going to own that right now, but I'm not practicing at every moment, and I want to learn how to do it more deeply. And so I facilitate that discussion, and we learn from one another. And I know some of the people who've already signed up are blowing my mind because they have lots that they can teach me, and I'm excited that they'll be part of this class too. So it'll be a sharing, and it's a deep practice. And there's work, there's homework. We're reading 2 books. We're writing them. We're not writing papers, but actually doing a presentation on one of the mystics. So we'll be learning a lot about the different mystics. But it's about having the experience of God rather than talking about God. It's about having, the real experience of oneness rather than just mouthing the oneness. that's what being a mystic is all about anyway. And as Gina's pointed out so well before, it's living from the inside out rather than from the outside in, and seeing things from a whole different perspective. It's somebody, I just read something recently by a man named Terry Patton. I'm loving his work lately. And he talks about having golden eyes. And the golden eyes see what God sees. And we see each other through golden eyes. And then also see the cartoon character that we all are. And seeing ourselves that way as well as everybody else. So we see both the golden eye. Mystics see them both. You know, you read Teresa of Avila, she calls herself a worm. She says she's terrible for women, but in her day that was appropriate, you know, and women are horrible. And she goes on and on. So we have to bypass some of that and get to the fact that, you know, this is the essence of what she's saying, is to be in love with the beloved. You know,
Yes.
that's where I'm aiming. So join me. It would be wonderful.
And we find that in many different places in many different ways. And everybody is going to find, I always say there's different paths up the mountaintop. But the fact that you're climbing, I'm so happy. I'm so happy you're climbing. However you find it, however you're looking, whatever is working for you. And you know it's working if there's a shift in conscience, if you feel better. I always say, if you're not happy, you're doing it wrong. We're here for joy. We're here to be loved and experience joy. And if not, we're doing it wrong. I truly believe that. And, you know, we get the opportunity.
No. I'm going to stop you. We're never doing it wrong. We can't do it wrong. There's
I don't mean doing it wrong in the sense of, it's not like right or wrong in the sense of morals, but there's always other ways. There's always ways to find joy through anything. And it's not just a joy that, I'm not talking about laughing and I'm talking to experience the peace of divine. The quality of divine are always accessible. Always.
The difference between joy and happiness. If I want a new car and I get a new car, I'm going to be happy for a while. If I want something different in my life, I get the new job that I wanted, I'm happy for a while. But joy can be in the midst of pain. You can feel and know joy regardless of what's going on.
And that was actually what brought my first book, Your Journey to Happiness. And that's what it says right in the beginning of it. Because in the midst of the most difficult time of my life, I found myself experiencing joy. And I said, well, if I can find that here, if I can laugh today in the midst of all that's going on in my life, then it's accessible anywhere. And that's where that came from, and that quest truly began. So I just want to make sure people can reach out. You can see this is the, ToniLaMotta.com #mystics. That's where they can get to you. That address is right there. But also they can also email you if they have more questions about it. I've got that posted as well, because we're actually running a little bit over. So I want to make sure that we get everything in, because it's important. I'm so grateful that you were here with us today. I wanted to just put out there, anybody that may have questions for me, it's Gina at believeInYouToday.com. Feel free to let me know whatever your suggestions for topics may be, or what brings you joy. I would love for you to email me and let me know. And I also want to just make sure that here at newthoughtmedia.org, we are here with so many opportunities for people. And if you gain something from this, if you feel empowered when you watch this network, which is what it's here for, whether it be the morning and evening treatments at 8:15 a.m. and p.m., or whether it be, one of the shows that are not just live all day long, but they're always available to replay at any time. So you can go back and look at all of the different topics that there are. If you feel, reach out. Make a donation, because what you give helps this platform to be here to reach more people. So I truly appreciate that. And I can't say enough, Dr. Toni, I have appreciated all that you have enlightened me with in different ways, because the way you teach is so different. And I truly encourage people to take a look at your course, take a look at your website in general. And I thank you for being here. And we definitely need to come back and talk about Enneagrams, because that is a thing. I definitely love to have you come back for that. Thank you for being here. And thank you all for watching. And any questions, like I said, just reach out and let us know. Have a wonderful day. May you always find the joy in your journey, and know that, we are here in so many ways. Enjoy every bit of life. That's what it's all about. Celebrate. Blessed be. Namaste. Have a lovely day.